Your bank account isn't failing because of bad math. It's being hunted. Not by a person, not by a brand, not even by a single app. By a prediction engine that watches what you linger on, what you skip, what you replay, what you zoom in on, what you screenshot, what you save for later, what you send to a friend with 3 laughing emojis, and what you stare at when you're tired enough to stop performing. And in 2026, that prediction engine doesn't just show you what you like, it shows you who you are expected to become. That's the pattern most people never see coming. You think you're scrolling content, but the content is sculpting your identity. And once your identity is sculpted, your spending follows like gravity. So when you tell yourself, I'm going to be frugal this month, you're not just fighting temptation, you're fighting an algorithm that already knows what frugal looks like in your feed and how to make it feel embarrassing. Because the new luxury isn't a choice anymore, it's a requirement for digital survival. Not in the literal sense, survival in the only sense your brain cares about when it's exhausted and online. Belonging, status, and the feeling that you're not falling behind. And that is exactly why your phone is rewiring your brain to hate being frugal. Not in one dramatic moment, but in thousands of micro moments per day, until restraint feels like deprivation, and saving money feels like losing a version of yourself you haven't even become yet. Let's break the spell.
Digital dysmorphia, the new way your reality starts feeling wrong. There's a word that used to belong to mirrors. Dysmorphia, that creeping feeling that what you see isn't what you're supposed to be. Today, it's not just bodies and faces, it's lifestyles, it's apartments, it's vacations, it's skincare routines, it's kitchens, it's cars, it's outfits. It's what your mornings look like, it's what your relationship looks like, it's what your productive day looks like. And here's the twist. The feed isn't random, it's not even popular, it's personal. So when you open your phone and see a stream of perfectly lit lives that match your taste so precisely it feels like mind reading, your brain makes a fatal mistake. It assumes the feed is a reflection of the world, but it's not. It's a reflection of a target version of you, the algorithmic mirror. Because modern feeds don't simply ask, what does this user enjoy? They ask, what identity will keep this user engaged the longest? And engagement isn't driven by content that makes you feel complete. It's driven by content that makes you feel slightly unfinished, slightly behind, slightly incomplete without one more upgrade. That's why the feed has evolved from showing you products to showing you outcomes. Not, here's a jacket, but here's who you are when you wear it. Not, here's a coffee machine, but here's the kind of person who has their life together enough to own it. Not, here's a trip, but here's the version of you who finally escaped. And when your brain watches those outcomes repeatedly, it starts storing them like emotional memories. Not because the moments happened to you, but because you experienced them through repetition, music, and story. Your brain isn't built to treat screens as fake. It's built to treat repeated emotional stimuli as meaningful. So the algorithm doesn't need to convince you with logic. It just needs to create a private movie of your future life, and then make your current life feel like the low-budget version. That feeling has a cost, because once your physical reality stops matching your predictive aesthetic, frugality stops feeling like discipline. It starts feeling like humiliation, like you're choosing to stay small, like you're failing publicly, even if nobody said a word. And that's how digital dysmorphia begins. Your real life becomes the before picture, and the feed becomes the after picture. Every day, all day.
The algorithmic mirror. When your feed stops showing what you like and starts showing what you lack. Think about what the feed used to be. A chaotic stream. A place where you'd stumble into something funny, something weird, something you didn't ask for. Now imagine the opposite. A feed so accurate, it feels like it's reading your mind. That accuracy feels convenient until you realize what it's doing to your sense of normal. Because in the old era, targeted ads were obvious. You searched for running shoes, and suddenly running shoes followed you around the internet like a clingy ex. Annoying, easy to spot. But the modern loop doesn't chase you with the same product. It surrounds you with a world where that product is simply what people like you have. And that's the psychological upgrade that changed everything. You're not being sold a thing. You're being sold a baseline, a new normal. And once your brain adopts that baseline, frugality feels like violating the social contract of your own identity. This is the hidden mechanism behind overspending in 2026. Consumption is no longer driven primarily by impulse. It's driven by alignment, the need to align your real life with the character your feed keeps casting you as. So when you resist buying, it doesn't feel like you're saving money. It feels like you're refusing to become who you're supposed to be. And that's a brutal feeling to sit with, especially when you're already tired, especially when you're already stressed, especially when you've been online long enough that the feed feels like home.
The death of the impulse buy. You didn't get more impulsive, buying got less friction. Here's the lie people tell themselves when they overspend. I have no self-control. But that's not the real story. The real story is that buying has been engineered to happen faster than your self-control can even show up. Impulse buying used to have friction. You had to click out. You had to open a website. You had to type in shipping. You had to enter a card. You had to confirm the address. You had to feel, at least for a moment, that you were spending real money. Now, buying is practically a reflex, a thumbprint, a face scan, a stored card, a one-tap checkout, a payment plan that turns the full price into a small, harmless-looking number that whispers, "This doesn't count." And the most dangerous part is that the feed and the checkout now live in the same emotional space. You're not calmly shopping on a Saturday afternoon. You're buying while you're emotionally activated, laughing, comparing, craving, coping, fantasizing. And in that state, your brain isn't running a budget, it's running a story where the purchase fixes something, not your life, your feeling. Because a lot of modern purchases aren't really purchases, they're mood regulation, a remedy, a tiny act of control, a dopamine-flavored promise that you can become different without the slow discomfort of actually changing your habits. And the loop gets tighter because the system doesn't just wait for you to want something. It learns when you're most vulnerable to wanting. Late at night, after a hard day, after a social comparison hit, after an awkward moment, after you scroll past someone's highlight reel and your brain quietly says, "I should be further along." In 2026, you're not just marketed to, you're timed. The feed becomes an emotional thermostat. It senses your temperature and offers a solution before you even consciously label the feeling. And once you've bought in that state a few times, your brain learns the association. Scroll, feel something, purchase, relief. That's conditioning, not weakness. Then come the timers, the only a few left, the personalized countdown, the limited drop, the exclusive access. Even when the scarcity is digital, your brain treats it as physical, as loss, as danger. And scarcity collapses your decision-making window. It kills the cooling off period, that beautiful, old-school gap where your logical brain could catch up and ask, "Do I actually need this?" In 2026, by the time your logic arrives, the package is already shipped, and your brain is already chasing the next hit. Identity as a service. When spending stops being utility and starts being maintenance. There was a time when you bought things because they were useful. Then it became you bought things because they were enjoyable. Now, in 2026, the dominant reason is quieter and more expensive. You buy things to maintain a version of yourself, not just for other people, for the algorithm. Because the algorithm rewards certain signals, certain aesthetics, certain brands,
certain lifestyles, certain vibes. And when you post, share, like, save, or even linger on content that fits a high-status pattern, the system learns this is what you respond to, so it feeds you more. And the more it feeds you, the more your brain begins to treat that identity as your real self, which means your spending becomes a form of upkeep, like paying rent on your digital avatar. That's why frugality feels so emotionally unpleasant now. Frugality used to mean I'm choosing the future over the present. Now it can feel like I'm choosing invisibility over relevance. And relevance is addictive because it's social oxygen. Even if you never post, even if you don't consider yourself an influencer, your brain still wants to feel like it belongs to the world it's consuming. So spending shifts from what do I need to what would someone like me have. And someone like me is defined subtly, constantly, by what the feed normalizes. That's how identity becomes a service with monthly fees. Not always literal subscriptions, though those are everywhere too, but psychological subscriptions. The ongoing cost of staying current, of staying aesthetically coherent, of staying in the conversation. Because once your identity is tied to upgrades, standing still feels like falling behind, and falling behind feels dangerous. Not logically, emotionally. The echo chamber of excess, how the algorithm fakes the average life. Now let's talk about the most expensive illusion the internet sells you, the illusion of what's normal. Here's what happens. You scroll and see people upgrading. New phones, new trips, new apartments, new wardrobes, new cars, new gadgets, new routines, new everything. And your brain, being the pattern-detecting machine that it is, concludes this must be the baseline now. But it isn't. It's a highlight reel filtered through a recommendation engine that amplifies what keeps you watching. And what keeps you watching is often what makes you compare. And what makes you compare is often what makes you spend. So the algorithm doesn't show you an accurate picture of your peers. It shows you a concentrated, repeated dose of aspirational consumption until it feels like the median life. Then comes the social distortion. Because once you've watched luxury long enough, modesty starts looking like failure. A quiet night at home starts looking like wasting your life. A used car starts looking like settling. A simple meal starts looking like not romantic enough. A budget starts looking like a punishment. And this is where frugality becomes emotionally hated, not because frugality is bad, but because the feed frames it as a downgrade in identity.
Like you're choosing a smaller life, even if you're choosing a smarter one. This is the feedback loop of financial distortion. Your spending expectations rise, not because your needs changed, but because your reference point did. And once your reference point is warped, your financial decisions stop being about money. They become about self-respect, about belonging, about proving you're still in the game. Meanwhile, the math doesn't care about your aesthetic. Debt doesn't care about your vibe. And in the real world, the numbers have been getting heavier. By the end of 2025, credit card balances in the United States totaled about $1.28 trillion outstanding. That's not just a statistic, that's a symptom, a sign that the cost of keeping up is being financed, not afforded. And when keeping up is financed, frugality doesn't feel like wisdom, it feels like exile from the life you've been trained to want.
The new normalization of small debt, when payment plans make everything feel harmless. There's another subtle rewiring your phone does to your brain. It shrinks prices, not by making things cheaper, by breaking them into pieces. Because when a purchase is offered as 4 payments or a small monthly amount, your brain doesn't feel the full cost. It feels the bite-sized cost. And the bite-sized cost feels manageable, even when stacking 10 bite-sized costs becomes a chokehold. This is one of the most powerful spending distortions, the conversion of big prices into small feelings. It's why someone can say, with a straight face, it's only $40 a month, while paying that sentence 10 times over. And this isn't fringe behavior. A meaningful share of people have used buy now, pay later products in the past year, and many report they used it because it was the only way they could afford the purchase. That is a financial reality colliding with a digital reality, and the collision creates stress, shame, and a stronger craving for the escape hatch of consumption. Because when money's tight, the feed feels even louder. It feels like everyone else is living, and you're just surviving. So you buy a piece of the fantasy. Then your future self inherits the bill, and the algorithm learns this works. The hidden mental toll, when your digital self becomes a job you can't quit. At some point, the spending stops being fun. It becomes maintenance, and maintenance becomes pressure. Because now you're not just managing bills, you're managing the fear of falling out of alignment with the life your feed expects you to have. That's exhausting. It's like acting in a role you never auditioned for, on a stage that never closes. And even if you never post, you still feel the performance internally. You still feel the gap between your life and the life you keep being shown. That gap creates tension, and tension demands relief. And the fastest relief is usually something you can buy. So the loop becomes inadequacy, scroll, fantasy, purchase, relief, debt, stress, scroll. Notice what's missing from that loop. Peace, clarity, a stable baseline. And once you're inside that cycle, frugality doesn't feel like being responsible. It feels like trying to breathe underwater, because the feed trained your brain to treat spending as oxygen.
Reclaiming financial autonomy. How people break the loop without white-knuckling willpower. Here's the part that changes everything. The goal isn't to become stronger than the algorithm. The goal is to stop letting the algorithm be the environment your brain lives in. Because your spending is not only a decision, it's a response to cues, to prompts, to normalization, to repetition, to identity pressure, to emotion. So the people who escape the loop don't just budget harder, they redesign what their brain repeatedly sees. They stop feeding the system clean data about their insecurities. They create interference, noise, friction. They make the prediction engine less accurate about what will trigger them. Because accuracy is the weapon. When the feed can predict you, it can steer you. When it can't, it has to guess, and guessing is weaker. So the first reclaiming isn't about money, it's about pattern disruption. The second reclaiming is about redefining frugality, not as deprivation, but as ownership. Ownership of your attention, ownership of your baseline, ownership of your future. Because frugality in its pure form is not saying no to life, it's saying no to the fake life that was rented to you through a screen, and yes to the real life that you actually get to keep. Then comes a new framework, one that works in a world where your phone is trying to sell you a personality. Digital minimalist finances. Not minimalism as a trend, but minimalism as a financial boundary. A way to separate true needs from curated desires. A way to stop confusing "I saw it" with "I need it." A way to stop confusing "it fits my vibe" with "it fits my future." Because your real financial life doesn't happen in the feed. It happens in your cash flow, your savings, your debt, your ability to absorb a surprise, your ability to say no, your ability to walk away. That's the real flex. Not the unboxing, not the upgrade, not the aesthetic. The ability to remain calm when you don't buy. The ability to feel whole when you don't keep up. The ability to let someone else live loudly while you live freely. And once you taste that freedom, once you feel what it's like to scroll without being pulled, to see luxury without feeling smaller, to hear limited drop without your heart rate changing, something inside you shifts. Frugality stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like immunity. The future vision. When your phone stops being a slot machine for your insecurities, imagine your feed no longer knowing exactly how to make you feel behind. Imagine you're no longer living in a curated comparison chamber. Imagine luxury goes back to being optional, a preference, not a requirement. Because in that future, your money doesn't leak out through micro moments of identity panic. It stays with you. It compounds. It buys time. It buys space. It buys choices. And that's the final reversal. The algorithm wants you to believe the most important thing you can maintain is your image. But the truth is, the most important thing you can maintain is your autonomy. Your ability to decide what you want before the feed tells you. Your ability to feel enough before the screen tells you you're not. Your ability to be frugal without feeling like you're dying socially. Because the moment you can be frugal and still feel powerful, the algorithm loses its favorite leverage, and you get your brain back, you get your money back, and slowly, quietly, you get your life back. If you enjoyed watching this video, hit the like and subscribe button. Until next time, thanks for watching.